Okay, you want to own a Starbucks franchise. Find a busy street, open a Starbucks, sell coffee all day, watch customers line up every morning willing to pay $6 or $7 for a drink that costs a fraction of that to make. From the outside, it looks like the perfect business. People walk in before work, students stay for hours, office workers grab an afternoon coffee, tourists stop because they recognize the green logo from almost anywhere on Earth. It feels like the kind of business that practically runs itself. And that's exactly why thousands of people every year search the same question: how do I buy a Starbucks franchise? The surprising part isn't the answer, it's the fact that there almost isn't one. In fact, if you had $10 million sitting in your bank account today, Starbucks still probably wouldn't sell you a traditional franchise, which raises a much more interesting question. If franchising made companies like McDonald's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, why did Starbucks deliberately choose a completely different path? And more importantly, is that decision actually making Starbucks more money? To answer that, we have to stop thinking about Starbucks as a coffee company, because that's the first mistake almost everyone makes. Walk into any Starbucks during the morning rush. You'll see espresso machines steaming nonstop, baristas calling out names, cold drinks lined up across the counter, customers walking out with cups in one hand and phones in the other. Everything happening around you screams one thing: coffee. But coffee is only what customers see. Behind the counter, Starbucks is really operating something much closer to a global retail logistics company. Every store has to receive fresh milk almost daily. Coffee beans arrive roasted to exact specifications. Thousands of food items move through refrigerated supply chains. Digital orders flow through mobile apps before customers even step inside. Gift cards, loyalty rewards, equipment maintenance, real estate negotiations — none of those things have anything to do with making a latte. Yet every one of them determines whether the store makes money. And that's where Starbucks made a decision that changed the economics of the entire company. Instead of asking entrepreneurs to risk their own money opening stores, Starbucks decided it wanted control. Complete control. Control over how every drink tastes. Control over how every employee greets customers. Control over store layouts. Control over pricing. Control over promotions. Control over technology. Even control over the music playing inside the cafe. Because Starbucks wasn't trying to sell franchises, it was trying to build one brand that felt identical whether you were standing in Seattle, Chicago, London, Tokyo, or Dubai. Consistency became the product, not coffee. That sounds simple until you realize how expensive consistency actually is. Think about what happens before the first customer walks through the door. First comes the location. Starbucks doesn't randomly choose busy streets. Entire teams analyze neighborhoods months before signing a lease. They study traffic patterns, morning commuters, office density, population growth, household income, nearby schools, shopping centers, competing coffee shops, even which side of the street drivers use during the morning commute. Sometimes, moving a location just a few hundred feet changes annual sales by hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's because convenience often beats quality. A customer running late for work isn't comparing coffee beans. They're choosing whichever entrance is easiest to reach. The right corner can outperform the wrong one for years. Now, imagine finding thousands of those locations across more than 80 countries. That's not luck, that's data. And data costs money. Once Starbucks finds the perfect location, another challenge begins: building it. Most people notice the furniture, the comfortable chairs, the lighting, the menu boards. What they don't notice are the hidden costs inside the walls. Commercial plumbing, heavy-duty electrical systems, water filtration, specialized ventilation, grease traps for food preparation, security systems, internet infrastructure, commercial refrigeration. Every espresso machine alone can cost well over $20,000. Many locations operate multiple machines simultaneously. Then there are grinders, brewers, ice machines, ovens, display refrigerators, point-of-sale systems, digital ordering screens, backup equipment. Before selling a single cup of coffee, opening one company-operated Starbucks can require an investment ranging from several $100,000 to well over $1 million depending on location, construction, and local regulations. That's a huge investment, especially when you remember Starbucks is paying that bill itself, not a franchise owner. Most franchise companies avoid this entirely. McDonald's collects franchise fees. Subway collects franchise fees. Thousands of independent owners invest their own savings to build locations. Starbucks usually doesn't. Starbucks writes the check. which sounds incredibly risky until you understand what Starbucks receives in return. Every dollar of profit. Instead of collecting a small royalty from a franchise owner, Starbucks owns the entire business. Every latte, every breakfast sandwich, every frappuccino, every cake pop, every reusable cup, every gift card, every seasonal promotion. The upside belongs almost entirely to Starbucks, but so does the risk. And that's where labor quietly becomes one of the company's biggest challenges. Imagine standing inside a Starbucks on a Tuesday morning. By 6:30 a.m., the first customers arrive. By 7:15, there's a line to the door. Mobile orders begin stacking faster than baristas can finish them. Drivers fill the drive-thru. Someone wants almond milk, somewhere else wants oat milk. One customer forgot to remove whipped cream. Another changes 3 ingredients halfway through ordering. The entire system depends on speed. Every extra 30 seconds matters. But here's the strange part. That rush only lasts a short time. Around mid-morning, traffic slows dramatically. The espresso machines don't disappear. Neither do the employees. Labor continues costing money every minute, whether 5 customers arrive or 50. That's one reason labor has become one of Starbucks' largest operating expenses. In recent years, the company has invested heavily in higher wages, expanded employee benefits, healthcare programs, tuition assistance, and training. Those investments help attract workers, but they also increase operating costs across thousands of stores. Customers often notice the higher drink prices. What they don't see is that Starbucks isn't just paying for coffee. It's paying for thousands of employees capable of producing nearly identical drinks under enormous pressure every single morning. And consistency requires training, lots of it. A new employee doesn't simply memorize drink recipes. They learn customer service, food safety, equipment operation, cleaning procedures, inventory management, mobile ordering systems, loyalty rewards, store standards, emergency procedures. Each new employee represents weeks of payroll before becoming fully productive. Then imagine that employee leaving after only a few months. Now Starbucks starts over. Again, employee turnover quietly costs the company millions of dollars every year. Not because wages are wasted, because experience walks out the door. Every time. Of course, labor isn't the only expense growing faster than customers realize. Think about milk. To most customers, milk is just another ingredient. To Starbucks, milk is an enormous supply chain. Millions of gallons move through refrigerated distribution networks every year. The same goes for coffee beans, sugar, flavor syrups, cups, lids, napkins, sandwiches, cake pops, protein boxes. Each item has to arrive at exactly the right store at exactly the right time. Running out of espresso beans during the morning rush isn't inconvenient, it's catastrophic. Keeping too much inventory creates a different problem. Milk expires, food spoils, waste quietly destroys margins. So Starbucks spends enormous amounts predicting customer demand before customers even know what they'll order. Weather forecasts influence staffing. Holiday weekends influence inventory. Local events influence deliveries. College schedules influence traffic. Even temperature changes influence drink sales. A 10-degree increase outside can dramatically increase cold beverage demand. And cold beverages have quietly become one of Starbucks' biggest businesses. Years ago, Starbucks was known primarily for hot coffee. Today, cold drinks account for well over half of beverage sales in many markets. Cold foam, refreshers, frappuccinos, cold brew, iced shaken espresso. Customers aren't just buying caffeine anymore, they're buying customization. That's another hidden economic advantage. Think about ordering your own drink. Extra espresso, oat milk, cold foam, vanilla syrup, caramel drizzle, light ice, extra pumps. Every small modification increases the average ticket. Many of those upgrades cost Starbucks only a few additional cents. Customers willingly pay much more. Those tiny upgrades, repeated millions of times every week, quietly generate enormous amounts of additional revenue. The interesting part is that Starbucks never pressures customers aggressively. Instead, the menu encourages upgrades naturally. Seasonal drinks appear first. Limited-time flavors create urgency. Premium cold beverages sit prominently on displays. The psychology feels subtle, but it's remarkably effective. Customers rarely walk in planning to spend $8. Many walk out doing exactly that. And Starbucks understands something almost every retailer eventually discovers. Getting one existing customer to spend $1 extra is often easier than finding a brand new customer. That's one reason the Starbucks Rewards program became so valuable. At first glance, it looks like a simple loyalty app. Buy coffee, earn stars, redeem rewards. Pretty straightforward. Except that's not really what Starbucks built. The app transformed millions of anonymous customers into predictable purchasing patterns. Now, Starbucks knows how often someone visits, what drinks they prefer, which store they visit, when they usually arrive, whether promotions increase spending, which seasonal drinks create repeat purchases. The app isn't just rewarding customers, it's helping Starbucks predict tomorrow's business before tomorrow arrives. That's incredibly powerful, because predictability changes everything. A business that knows roughly how many customers will arrive next Tuesday can schedule labor more efficiently, order inventory more accurately, reduce waste, improve service, all without selling a single additional drink. The app also creates something even more valuable: habit. Most successful businesses don't simply sell products, they become routines. Morning coffee, lunch break, afternoon pick-me-up, weekend family outing. Once Starbucks becomes part of someone's daily schedule, competitors face an uphill battle. Changing routines is surprisingly difficult, which explains why Starbucks spends so much effort keeping customers inside its ecosystem. Gift cards, rewards, exclusive offers, birthday drinks, mobile ordering, personalized recommendations. Every feature encourages customers to come back tomorrow because repeat customers are dramatically more valuable than first-time visitors. Acquiring a brand new customer can cost many times more than keeping an existing one happy. Now, imagine multiplying that relationship across tens of millions of active rewards members. Suddenly, Starbucks isn't just operating coffee stores, it's operating one of the largest consumer loyalty ecosystems in the world. And that's exactly where another hidden advantage begins to appear. Because every dollar customers load onto a Starbucks gift card or digital account creates something few people ever think about. The company receives the cash before it serves the coffee. That might not sound revolutionary until you realize what happens when millions of customers do it at the same time. Imagine loading $25 onto your Starbucks app. From your perspective, it's just money you'll spend over the next week or two. From Starbucks' perspective, that money's already sitting in its bank account. The coffee hasn't been brewed. The milk hasn't been poured. The employee hasn't made the drink. Yet the cash has already arrived. Multiply that by tens of millions of customers around the world, and Starbucks is temporarily holding billions of dollars in customer balances. Accountants call this deferred revenue. Economically, it's something even more valuable: interest-free working capital. Instead of borrowing money from a bank to help finance day-to-day operations, Starbucks is often using money customers voluntarily handed over in advance. Very few retail businesses operate at that scale. But even that isn't the company's biggest advantage. The real advantage is something customers rarely notice. Walk into almost any Starbucks and look around. Very few people order the same drink. One person orders a plain black coffee. Another wants an iced caramel macchiato with oat milk. Someone else orders a pink drink. Another adds an extra shot. One customer wants sugar-free vanilla. The next wants no foam. To an outsider, it looks chaotic. To Starbucks, it's incredibly profitable. Because customization creates the feeling of getting exactly what you wanted without requiring the company to reinvent its entire menu. Most drinks are built from the same core ingredients: espresso, milk, ice, flavor syrups, whipped cream, cold foam, different combinations, different prices. The menu feels almost endless. The inventory stays surprisingly manageable. That's one of the quietest forms of operational efficiency in modern retail. Now compare that to a traditional restaurant. Every new entree usually requires new ingredients: more storage, more staff training, more preparation, more waste. Starbucks adds a seasonal syrup and suddenly creates dozens of new drink combinations. The perception of variety becomes far larger than the actual increase in complexity. Customers feel like they're getting something new. Operations barely change. That balance between simplicity behind the counter and variety in front of the customer took decades to perfect. But Starbucks wasn't just refining its menu. It was quietly changing where people bought coffee. Years ago, coffee was something many people made at home before leaving for work. Today, grabbing coffee on the way to work has become part of everyday life for millions of people. Starbucks didn't create coffee. It helped redefine the habits surrounding it. Howard Schultz, the man most associated with building Starbucks into a global brand, often talked about creating a third place. Not home, not work, something in between. A place where people could meet friends, read, study, take business meetings, or simply spend a few quiet minutes before the rest of the day began. Whether every customer consciously thinks about that idea doesn't really matter. What matters is that Starbucks designs stores around that experience. Comfortable seating, free Wi-Fi, music, consistent lighting, clean restrooms, familiar layouts. None of those things directly generate revenue, but together they create an environment customers recognize almost instantly. Recognition builds trust. Trust builds repeat visits. Repeat visits build revenue. That's why Starbucks protects its brand so aggressively. Now imagine what happens if thousands of independent franchise owners begin making their own decisions. One owner decides to save money by buying cheaper furniture. Another reduces employee training. Someone else changes recipes. Another stops cleaning as frequently. One store feels premium. The next feels neglected. Customers stop trusting the logo because every location becomes unpredictable. That's the exact problem Starbucks spent decades trying to avoid. By operating most stores itself, the company sacrifices rapid franchise expansion, but gains something arguably more valuable: control. Complete control over the customer experience. Of course, that doesn't mean every Starbucks is company-owned. Here's where the story becomes more interesting. Some Starbucks locations are licensed, but licensing isn't the same thing as franchising. Think about the Starbucks inside an airport, or a university campus, or a hospital, or inside a grocery store like Target. Those locations are often operated by the larger organization itself under a licensing agreement. The airport hires the employees, the university runs the store, the grocery chain manages daily operations. Starbucks supplies the brand, operating standards, products, training requirements, and quality expectations. The economics are completely different from traditional franchising. Instead of handing over the brand to thousands of independent entrepreneurs, Starbucks carefully chooses partners capable of protecting its reputation. Control remains the priority, even when someone else operates the location. That's a subtle distinction, but it explains why finding a Starbucks franchise for sale is almost impossible, because for most entrepreneurs, there simply isn't one. Naturally, that raises another question. If Starbucks doesn't aggressively franchise like McDonald's, did it sacrifice growth? Surprisingly, no. In fact, Starbucks became one of the fastest growing restaurant brands in modern history. Thousands of stores, dozens of countries, millions of customers every day. The difference wasn't slower growth, it was more expensive growth. Every new company-operated store required Starbucks to invest enormous amounts of capital. That sounds risky, because it is. Economic downturns don't ask whether your stores are company-owned, they still affect customer traffic. Higher wages still increase labor costs. Rent still has to be paid. Electricity still arrives every month. Owning your own stores means owning your own problems, and Starbucks has certainly faced them. During periods of inflation, ingredient costs rise. Milk becomes more expensive. Coffee prices fluctuate with global harvests. Packaging costs increase. Transportation becomes more expensive. Meanwhile, customers begin watching their own budgets. A $7 specialty drink suddenly feels less essential than it did a year ago. That's when the company's operating discipline becomes incredibly important. Because Starbucks can't just hope customers keep spending, it has to give them reasons to return. Sometimes it's a new seasonal drink. Sometimes it's digital promotions. Sometimes it's operational improvements that reduce waiting times. Every small improvement matters because Starbucks operates on an enormous scale. Imagine reducing average drink preparation time by just 5 seconds. 5 seconds feels meaningless. Now multiply those 5 seconds across millions of drinks every single day. Suddenly, stores serve more customers, lines move faster, customer satisfaction improves, revenue quietly increases without opening a single additional location. That's why Starbucks invests heavily in technology most customers never notice. Behind every drink sits software forecasting inventory, optimizing schedules, tracking sales trends, monitoring equipment performance, helping managers understand exactly what's happening inside their stores. The coffee shop customers see is only the surface. Behind it sits an incredibly sophisticated operating system. Yet, even with all that technology, one thing still determines whether a Starbucks store succeeds: location.